I thought of, in anticipation of Gaur Purnima, I thought of spending some time hearing about Lord Chaitanya. And I thought many of you might not know some of the wonderful pastimes of Lord Chaitanya's childhood. Not like little child, not like this one, but when he was young. So a little background. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was the son of Jagannath Mishra. Jagannath Mishra was amongst the Brahmana community. He was most learned, most respected elder, and his mother Sachi, her father Nilambar Chakravarti, was similarly very elevated, very learned, very revered member in the Brahminical community. So naturally, when Nimai was growing up, he had similar propensities. Here's a little detail. It's nice detail. 6 children, shortly after they were born, from Mother Jasoda, from Sachi and Jagannath Mishra, they died. 6. Same number as what happened with Devaki's children, 6 children. The 7th child lived. His name was Vishwarup. And Nimai was the younger brother. Vishwarup, later, when he became a little older, Vishwarup understood Mom and Dad are going to want to get me married. And so he took sannyas. He left home. And Mother Sachi, all she had left was her son, because after some time her husband died. So just Sachi and Nimai. But before her husband died, they were restricting him from studies. They were restricting him from studies because his elder brother had left. So if this young boy also becomes very learned, he may also take sannyas. So they didn't let him go to school. It was a bad idea. He was very naughty. I mean, this little girl is nothing compared to Nimai. He was very naughty. Many things he did. So naughty that they decided we have to send him to school. He has to have something to do. So he then became the student of Gangadas Pandit. Gangadas Pandit was one of the... No, thank you. No, thanks. No, thanks. Gangadas Pandit was one of the teachers of young boys. And Nimai mastered everything he learned. He had to teach in a short while. So he then, the teacher made his student a sub-teacher, or teacher of many other students, and his field of teaching was grammar. So he became known as Nimai Pandit, because he's the personality of Godhead. And if you're going to be a teacher and you're the personality of Godhead, you're going to be a really good teacher. So his school grew very quickly. And the parents wanted their sons to study with him because he was so good. And I'm going to read from there, I'm going to read a section where it's describing Nimai as a young boy. One might imagine, doesn't give the number of years old, but 12 years old, 10 years old, something in that range. And I want you to appreciate, I want to read so that you will appreciate the writing style of Rundavan Das Taqwar. Rundavan Das Taqwar was the first of the biographers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And his style of writing, he learned it, but his style of writing was more spontaneous than educational. He just would say things and say in an ecstatic mood, making no attempt to acclimate or orient his audience to where he was coming from. He just had jubilant, joyful views about Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, and he just wrote it. That's a very interesting style. And it was meant to be sung. But I'm not going to sing it. I'm just going to read the translation. It's very nice. Lord Gaurachandra enjoyed the same pastimes as when Lord Narayana personally taught his disciples. Narayana. Sri Sachinandan is certainly that same Lord Narayana who resides in Badrikashram. Therefore, the Lord of Vaikuntha enjoyed those same pastimes while relishing scholastic pleasures with his students. After teaching, at midday the Lord would take his students for a bath in the Ganges. The Lord sported in the waters of the Ganges for some time and then returned home to worship Lord Vishnu. Then, after watering and circumambulating Tulsi, the Lord recited the name of Hari as he sat down to eat. Lakshmi, so he's now married, so he's 14, 15, something like that. Served rice, and the Lord of Vaikuntha ate. The pious Mother Sachi watched to her full satisfaction. After finishing his meal, the Lord chewed betel nuts and then lay down while Lakshmi massaged his lotus feet. After taking some rest, the Lord again went out with his books. Nimai enjoyed various pastimes in the city and smiled as he talked with the residents. Although no one knew his real identity, the residents still offered him respects whenever they saw him. The Brahmana, an learned Brahmana, and wonderful personality. Although Sri Sachinandana is rarely seen by even the demigods, now he wandered through the streets of Navadvip within the sight of all. One day, so he's a Brahmana, he's going to go visit people and ask for charity in the role or capacity as a Brahmana. One day, the Lord went to the house of a weaver, and the weaver respectfully offered him obeisances. The Lord said, "Bring one nice piece of cloth." And the weaver immediately brought some cloth. The Lord then asked, "What is the price of this cloth?" The weaver replied, "Give me whatever you like." After settling the price, the Lord said, "I don't have any money right now." The weaver then said, "Oh, Gosai, you can give it to me in 10 or 15 days. Take the cloth and happily wear it. You can pay me whenever you please." After mercifully glancing at the weaver, the Lord continued on to the house of a cowherd. Mahaprabhu sat down on his veranda and began to make fun of the activities of the Brahmanas. The Lord said, "Oh son, bring me some milk and yogurt. Today I'm going to accept charity from your house." The cowherd men thought Nimai looked just like Cupid. They respectfully offered him a nice asana. They began to joke with the Lord and address him as uncle. One of them said, "Come, uncle, let us go eat some rice." Then one of them took Nimai on his shoulder and carried him to his house. Another said, "Don't you remember how you previously ate all the rice in my house?" Although the cowherd boys didn't realize it, by the grace of the transcendental goddess of learning, Saraswati, whatever they spoke was true. Meanwhile, Nimai simply smiled at their words. All the gopas then happily offered the Lord milk, ghee, yogurt, cream, and butter. After being satisfied by the gopas, the Lord went to the house of a perfume merchant. The merchant offered his respectful obeisance to the Lord, who said, "Oh, brother, bring me some of your best perfume." The perfume merchant immediately brought some of his best perfume, and Sri Satyanandana inquired, "What is the price?" The merchant replied, "You know, my dear sir, is it befitting for me to take money from you? Today, you apply this oil and go home. If, after taking bath tomorrow, the fragrance still remains, then you may pay me whatever you like." Saying this, the merchant happily applied the perfume on the body of the Lord. The Lord is the super soul of all living entities, therefore he attracts the minds of all. Who is not attracted by seeing his beautiful form? Vishvambar bestowed his mercy on the merchant and then continued to the house of a florist. It reminds me of when Krishna entered Mathura and he went to eat similar places. When the florist saw Nimai's most wonderful form, he offered him obeisances and a place to sit. The Lord said, "Oh, florist, I would like a nice garland, but I have no money with me." Appreciating that Nimai had the symptoms of a spiritually perfect soul, the florist said, "You don't need to pay." After saying this, the florist garlanded the Lord, who smiled in the company of his students. After casting his merciful glance on the florist, Gauranga went to the house of a betel nut merchant. The merchant saw Nimai's form as more enchanting than that of Cupid. He took dust from Nimai's feet and offered him a place to sit. The merchant said, "It is my great fortune that you have come to my house, insignificant as I am." I'm rethinking, his age must be older because they're treating him like that. In full satisfaction and without being asked, the merchant then offered betel nut to the Lord, who smiled. The Lord then said, "Why did you give me betel nut without payment?" The merchant replied, "I was inspired to." The Lord smiled on hearing the merchant's reply, and he chewed the betel nut with great satisfaction. The merchant then devotedly offered Nimai some pan, camphor, and other spices, free of cost. After blessing the merchant, Gora smiled as he continued wandering the streets of Navadvip. He is engaging people in devotional service unknowingly. The city of Navadvip was just like Mathura. Millions of people belonging to different castes lived there. For the pleasure of the Lord, the Creator had previously supplied Navadvip with all opulences. The son of Sachi now enjoyed the same pastime that Krishna had previously enjoyed while wandering the streets of Mathura. Thereafter, Gora visited the house of a conch merchant, who offered the Lord due respect. The Lord said, "Dear brother, let me see some beautiful conches, but alas, how will I take any? I have no money." Just then the merchant placed a beautiful conch in Nimai's hand and offered him obeisances. "O Gosai, take this conch home with you. You may pay me later on or not, it doesn't matter." Pleased by the words of the conch merchant, the Lord glanced mercifully on him and departed. In this way, the Lord visited every house in Navadvip. For this reason, even today the residents of Navadvip attain the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. The supremely independent Lord Gaurachandra then went to the house of an astrologer. This is really fascinating. As the astrologer, the supremely independent Lord Gaurachandra then, we read that. As the astrologer saw the effulgence of the Lord, he humbly offered his obeisances. The Lord asked him, "I've heard you are a good astrologer. Could you please tell me who I was in my previous birth?" The pious astrologer agreed to the Lord's request and began to chant the Gopal mantra within his mind. At that moment, the astrologer saw a beautiful blackish personality with 4 hands holding Kanchas, club, and lotus. His chest was decorated with Srivatsa and the brilliantly effulgent Kaustubha gem. He saw the Lord in the prison cell being offered prayers by his parents at the dead of night. He then saw Vasudeva carrying the Lord that night to Goloka. The astrologer again saw the Lord as an enchanting 2-armed, naked child with a string of small bells around his waist and butter in his 2 hands. The astrologer saw his worshipable Lord decorated with all the symptoms he had meditated on. He then again saw the threefold bending form of the Lord playing on his flute and surrounded by the gopis who were singing and playing various musical instruments. After seeing this wonderful vision, the astrologer opened his eyes and saw Gauranga standing before him. Then he again entered into meditation. The astrologer said, "Oh, Bal Gopal, please listen. Quickly show me who this Brahmana was." The astrologer then saw the Lord with a greenish durva grass complexion, holding a bow in his hand and sitting on a royal throne. Thereafter, he saw the Lord in the middle of the waters of devastation. He had the wonderful form of a boar, and he held the earth on his tusks. He then saw the Lord as Nrsimha. Although he appeared most ferocious, he was the ultimate well-wisher of his devotees. Next he saw the form of Lord Vamana, waiting to deceive Bali at his sacrifice. Then he saw the form of Matsya, happily sporting in the waters of devastation. The pious astrologer then saw the intoxicated form of Lord Balaram, holding a plow and a club in his hands. He next saw the form of Jagannath, with Balaram on his right and Subhadra in between. In this way, the astrologer saw the Lord's various incarnations, but due to the Lord's illusory energy, he was unable to ascertain the meaning of what he had seen. The astrologer was struck with wonder and thought, "I think that this Brahmana is expert in chanting of mantras. Otherwise, he may be a demigod who has come disguised as a Brahmana to test me. I see a supernatural effulgence emanating from the body of this Brahmana. Has he come to discredit me?" The Lord smiled and asked the thoughtful astrologer, "Who am I? What did you see? Tell me everything in detail." The astrologer said, "You may go for now. I will tell you everything in the afternoon after I peacefully chant my mantra." Smiling, the Lord agreed to the astrologer's request and went to the house of his dear devotee, Sridhar. Now, is there anybody in the room that needs an introduction to cultivate your Shraddha? You all know. Oh, great. Okay. Are you familiar with this pastime? Anyway, it's nice. I'll read it. The way Vrindavan Das tells it. Shraddha was very dear to the Lord's heart, and the Lord would therefore visit him on various pretexts. The Lord would tease Shraddha in the course of their regular conversations, which would last for an hour or two. When Shraddha saw that Nimai had arrived, he offered him obeisances and a place to sit. Shraddha was always peaceful in his behavior, while the Lord enjoyed playing the role of an agitated young man. The Lord said, Shraddha, you always chant the name of Hari, so why are you always afflicted by poverty? Can you please tell me why, after serving the beloved Lord of Lakshmi, you do not get sufficient food and clothes? Shraddha replied, at least I'm not starving, and I am wearing some cloth, be it small or large. The Lord said, but I see your cloth is mended in 10 places, and the roof of your cottage has no straw. Look at other people. They worship Chandi and Vishahari, so they have no scarcity for food or cloth. Shraddha then replied, O Brahmana, what you say is indeed correct, yet time passes equally for everyone. The king has jewels in his house, and he eats opulent food. Meanwhile, the birds live in trees, yet time passes equally for everyone, as they all enjoy the fruits of their previous activities by the will of the Lord. There's a 3-page purport. Shraddha said, O Pandit, please go home now. It is not proper for us to argue. The Lord said, I am not going to leave you so easily. First tell me what you'll give me. First is so poor, now is what are you going to give me? Shraddha said, I maintain myself by selling leaf cups. So tell me, what can I give you, Gosai? The Lord said, let your hidden treasure remain for now. I'll take that later. For now, give me some bananas, banana flowers, and banana stalks free of charge. Then I won't argue with you. Now the treasure that he has is his devotion. And I'll accept that later. Shraddha thought, this Brahmin is very aggressive. I'm afraid that one day he will beat me. But even if he beats me, what can I do to a Brahmana? At the same time, I can't supply him free of charge every day. Anyway, whatever this Brahmana takes by force or deceit, that is my good fortune. So I'll continue to give him every day. Thinking this way, Shraddha said, listen, Gosai, don't worry about money. I'll happily give you some bananas, banana flowers, leaf cups, and banana stalks, but please, don't fight with me. The Lord said, good, then I won't fight anymore. But see that I get good quality bananas and banana stalks. The Lord daily used to use Shraddha's leaf cups, and he ate sabjis made of Shraddha's plantains, banana flowers, and banana stalks. Whenever a squash grew on the roof of Shraddha's cottage, the Lord would eat it, cooked with milk and black pepper. The Lord then said, tell me, what do you think of me? After you answer this, I'll go home. Shraddha replied, you are a Brahmana, a portion of Lord Vishnu. The Lord said, you don't know. Actually, I'm from a Gopa family. Although you see me as the son of a Brahmana, I consider myself a cowherd boy. Shraddha smiled at the Lord's words, but due to the illusory energy, he could not recognize his Lord. The Lord then said, Sridhar, let me tell you the truth. The glories of your Ganges are due to me. Sridhar replied, Nimai Pandit, are you afraid of insulting Ganga in that way? One is supposed to become sober as he grows up, but I see that your restlessness has doubled. After joking with Sridhar in this way, Lord Gauranga returned to his home. There's a nice pastime. There's several pastimes related to Kulabheshwar Sridhar. On the very evening that he was planning to take sannyas, Sridhar came all the way from his home to Nimai Pandit's home because there was a gourd that had grown on his roof, and he brought it as a gift to Nimai. And his wife cooked the gourd with milk and pepper, and he ate it. This was like in a parting event, just that very evening that he left home, while Lakshmi was taking rest, and he left to take sannyas. Sridhar is an eternal associate of Lord Chaitanya. When he was asked for a benediction at the Mahaprakash Leela, Sridhar said, I just want to be engaged in your service birth after birth. And you can tease me and taunt me and do whatever you like, because it gives you pleasure. So they had a very intimate relationship. It's described like this. He came every day for an hour or two, and they would do this bartering back and forth. Another time, this was on the evening that Lord Chaitanya went to the home of Chandkazi. Anyone here not know who was the incident with Chandkazi? You all know. That's great. Oh, okay, in the back.
There are some devotees for you.
No. Okay. In Lord Chaitanya's childhood pastimes, so those of you that just came in, we mentioned before, he grew up in a Brahmin family, and he took on the duties of a young Brahmin boy. When he went to school, very quickly he learned everything the teacher had to teach him, so he then became a teacher of students, kind of like an assistant to his teacher, Gangadas Pandit. And there was a particular pastime I'm going to narrate. It just went away. It's going back. This is going forward. In relation to Kulabheshwar Sridhar, I think. It went away. Chandkazi. Lord Chaitanya, when he was young, was a scholar, and not showing his role as a devotee or as a Vaishnav. He was just a wrangling debating, challenging, feisty scholar. And some of the elders would say, wouldn't it be very wonderful if you became a Vaishnava, because you're so good at debating, you would defeat everybody, become a Vaishnava, and then you could bring everybody to become a Vaishnava. And Lord Chaitanya would say, may your blessings become a fact. May that day come. So when he accepted initiation from his spiritual master, the initiation into the chanting of the holy name, his life as a devotee exploded and became very, very wonderful, quickly, almost instantly, and then continued to grow and grow. When this initiation took place in Gaya, because he went to Gaya to perform the Shraddha ceremony for his father. When he came back, he still had his school, but he was now not interested just becoming a grammar student or grammar teacher. So he started teaching them all the grammar rules using names of Krishna. And his students thought he'd gone mad. And they started criticizing him. He's gone mad. So when he was in this mood of being a teacher of Vaishnavism, he then started the gatherings at the home of Srivas Pandit. Those of you know the Panchatattva mantra, Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita, Gadadhar, Srivas. Srivas was they're all Brahmanas. Srivas was the elder of 4 brothers, and he had kind of like an extended living situation with his 3 brothers. And at the house of Srivas every evening, they had kirtan. And the kirtan went on every night, sometimes all through the night, with, the Vaishnavas, they kept the gate locked. The smarta brahmanas in the community, they were disturbed because it's really loud and so forth and so on. So the smarta brahmanas, went and complained to the Muslim magistrate, Chankazi. Stop this. You're the ruler, and he's destroying our culture. He's destroying our religion. Where is this in the religion of the Hindus? No one does this. So, responsive to the powerful Brahmins, he went and the Qazi sent constables and told the devotees, you stop this chanting. And they smashed one of the drums. And if you continue, you're all in big trouble. Put you in jail and stuff like that. That news came to Lord Chaitanya, and when the news came to Lord Chaitanya, Prabhupada liked to say, wouldn't like Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi or somebody else started the civil disobedience, Lord Chaitanya did the first civil disobedience. He defied the Qazi's order, stop, and ordered that all the marketplaces in Navadvip, tens of thousands of people, he was young, so now we're getting the idea of his age, he was in his 20s, around 20. And overnight, without sending text messages or anything, thousands of people came. And they had torches, because they were going to go to all the marketplaces and then into the night. And this big rabble-rousing group of Bengalis went at the end of the evening, at nightfall, to the home of Chankazi. Now, in the culture of the time, The Qazi was a magistrate, but he was the next in line behind the king in local governance. A very important person, very important position. And when the thousands of angry Bengalis came right to his palace door, he hid underneath his bed for his life. Big risk. And Lord Chaitanya just sat down underneath his window. Kind of a palace, and he sat on the ground and requested the Qazi to come see him. Eventually the Qazi came and they had some discussion. He said, Lord Chaitanya said, you have nothing to fear from me. You're like my uncle in our village relationship. And he said, yes, I know your father. And so, their conversation was not hostile. Lord Chaitanya asked him some questions. You're a scholar of the Quran. Can you tell me why in your scriptures it teaches to eat your mother? And the Qazi said, what? We don't eat our mother. And then he said, the cow is your mother. You take milk from the cow when you're a child, and then you grow up, you kill your mother. What kind of religion is this? They had some discussion. The Chand Qazi was a scholar. She said, in your religion, there's also sacrifice of animal. And Lord Chaitanya explained that the sacrifice was for rejuvenating the life of the animal, but never to take the life of a cow. And there's more details. And Chand Qazi accepted. And then Lord Chaitanya said, could you tell me when we came to your palace, you were hiding? And he said, I'll tell you in private. He said, there's no one here to hide anything from, you can say. So Chand Qazi said, after breaking the drum last night, I was lying in my bed, and this ferocious half-man, half-lion jumped on my chest and started ripping my chest with his nails. And he opened his shirt and showed the nail marks on his chest, fresh from yesterday evening. And he roared so loudly and he threatened me, I would kill you normally, but you better not do this again or you're finished. And he left. So I declare that this chanting of the holy name have you been doing can go on in my jurisdiction for my whole life and any of my successor generations. I declare it. So now they could go publicly and do Harinam Sankirtan. At the end of that pastime, those that are maybe a little familiar with the geography in Mayapur, Lord Chaitanya's home was here, Chand Qazi's home was here, and Sridhar's Kolovich Sridhar's home was not far. So immediately, that very evening, after this whole exchange with the Qazi, Lord Chaitanya went with his devotees to Kolovich Sridhar's home. And it was like at night. And they could hear him from a distance chanting the holy name loudly, because that's what he did. And when Lord Chaitanya came, he said, I'm thirsty, give me some water. I mean, he said, I don't have any suitable vessel for you. He had an old iron pot with holes in it. And Lord Chaitanya picked up the iron pot with holes in it and started drinking the water. And Sridhar said, this isn't fit for you, please don't do this. As a demonstration of his affection, that very evening, it was a very dramatic turn of events in his pastimes. that there was fear on the part of the Brahmanas that there would be some pushback from others. And there was. But that very evening that he made that transition in his pastimes, the very next thing he did that evening, visit Kolovich or Shridhar. I find it very significant. His affection for a very poor man, wasn't his interest, wasn't his wealth. His interest was his devotion. He was very devoted to Lord Chaitanya, but in a very funny way, a kind of an unusual way. Because his occupation was Vaishya, then their exchange was bartering. Because that's what you do in India when you go to a vendor. It's never the fixed price like in the West. It's always bartering. I mean, you know better than I do, but that's my understanding of how it works. Kolovich or Shridhar was very simple and very pure, and had great devotion for Lord Chaitanya. And as a result, he would daily visit him and have these wonderful exchanges. I'm going to read a little bit more because time permits, I think. So after this exchange with the astrologer, he went, with Shridhar, he went back to his home. Sri Gaurasundar sat down at the door of his Vishnu temple, and his students all returned to their homes. As Nimai saw the full moon one night, his heart became absorbed in the mood of Rundavan Chandra. Nimai then began to play a flute in a most enchanting tune, which only Mother Sachi could hear. When Mother Sachi heard the sound of that flute, which attracts the three worlds, she fell unconscious, in ecstasy. After a while, she regained consciousness and steadied her mind as she continued listening to the wonderful sound of the flute. Sachi then noticed that the enchanting sound of the flute was coming from the direction where Nimai was sitting. Mother Sachi came outside in astonishment and saw that her son was sitting at the door of the Vishnu temple. She could no longer hear the sound of the flute. But when she saw the full moon on the chest of her son, Seeing the moon on the chest of her son, Sachi was struck with wonder and began looking around. Mother Sachi then went back inside and began to think about the reason for such a vision. In this way, there's no commentary, it's just, in this way, the most fortunate Mother Sachi saw unlimited manifestations of opulence. One night, Sachi heard hundreds of people singing and playing musical instruments. By the sound of dancing and various wind instruments, she considered that a grand Rasa Leela festival was taking place. One day, all she could see was a brilliant spiritual effulgence permeating her house. On another day, she saw many divine women who all held lotus flowers in their hands and resembled the goddess of fortune. One day, she saw the effulgent demigods, but when she looked again, she couldn't see them. It is not astonishing that Sachi had such visions, for the Vedas describe her as the personification of devotional service to Lord Vishnu. Whoever receives the merciful glance of Mother Sachi becomes eligible to see such opulences. In this way, Sri Gaurasundar, who is non-different than Lord Krishna, lives in Navadvip incognito while relishing his own ecstasy. Although the Lord manifested his opulences in various ways, his servants were still unable to recognize him. The arrogance that was sportingly displayed by Nimai was unmatched throughout Navadvip. In whatever form the Lord appears, the pastimes he displays are supreme in all respects. Whenever the Lord desires to fight, he becomes the topmost hero, and no one can surpass his prowess with weapons. Whenever the Lord desires to enjoy conjugal pastimes, he conquers the hearts of millions of beautiful women. Whenever the Lord desires to enjoy opulence, he fills his servants' homes with millions of treasures. In this way, the Lord now manifests similar supreme arrogance. Yet, when that same Lord later accepted the path of renunciation, then not even a fragment of the renunciation and devotion that he manifests could be found in anyone else within the three worlds. This fact is well known to all. One day, Nimai, along with 5 or 7 students, was walking down the main road. Now he's going to show his arrogance. Nimai was dressed like a king. The yellow cloth that covered his body made him look just like Krishna. As he chewed betel nut, his face resembled millions of moons. People who saw him inquired, "Is he Cupid?" His forehead was decorated with tilak, and in his hands, he carried some books. A glance from his lotus eyes destroyed all sins. As the restless-natured Lord walked along with his students, his arms swung back and forth. By providence, Srivas Pandit was coming from the opposite direction at that time. Upon seeing the Lord, Srivas began to laugh loudly. Nimai offered obeisances to Srivas, who blessed Nimai by saying, "Live a long life." Srivas smiled and inquired, "O best of the arrogant, where are you going? Why do you uselessly waste your time by not worshipping Krishna? Why do you spend day and night simply teaching mundane knowledge? Why do people study? Education is only for understanding devotional service of Lord Krishna. Therefore, don't uselessly waste your time any longer. You've studied enough. Now you should worship Krishna." Nimai smiled and said, "Listen, Pandit, that will certainly be done by your mercy." After speaking in this way, Mahaprabhu smiled and departed for the bank of the Ganges, where he met his students. Sri Sachinandana then sat on the bank of the Ganges with his students surrounding him. I could not describe the beauty of that scene if I had 1,000,000 mouths. It has no comparison in the three worlds. And he goes on, I cannot compare Nimai even to Brahaspati, because Brahaspati is partial to the demigods. The Lord, however, is partial to everyone, and therefore comparison to Brahaspati is unjustified. Nor can I compare Nimai to Cupid, because if Cupid appears in one's heart, the heart becomes agitated. When this Lord appears in one's heart, however, all one's material bondage is destroyed, and his heart becomes pure and happy. Therefore, all these comparisons are improper. But there is one comparison that I can think of. Just as, this is the last line, just as the son of Nanda enjoyed his pastimes, Krishna's pastimes, sitting among the cowherd boys on the bank of the Yamuna, that same Krishna, in the form of a Brahmana, now enjoyed pastimes sitting with those same cowherd boys on the bank of the Ganges. There's a book written by one of the contemporaries of Rundavan Das Taqwar. His name was Kavi Karnapur. Kavi Karnapur wrote several books. One of them is a very beautiful description of Krishna's pastimes. Rundavan Champu. Rundavan Champu. Ananda Rundavan Champu. Ananda Rundavan Champu. It's just Krishna's pastimes. But another book that he wrote was Gora Gonodesh Dipika. It's a description of all those devotees who are in Krishna's pastimes. Who are they in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes? Those devotees in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. Who are they in Krishna's pastimes? Just like here, Vrindavan Das is saying, these students who are so dear to Lord Chaitanya, in previous pastimes with Krishna, they were cowherd boys, and they were just enjoying being with Krishna by the side of the river Jamuna with their cows. And here it's young boys with their teacher and his books, enjoying swimming in the Ganges and all of their activities. The picture that's being portrayed by Vrindavan Das is the Lord is super excellent in all respects, just as Narayana in Narayan Rishi in Badrikashram teaches, so in a certain way, in a certain mood, to a certain group of students. So Lord Chaitanya was doing like that. Better than Brahaspati, better than this and that. The super excellent enjoying of his pastimes of teaching. And the pastimes of teaching has a significance. The significance is, one of the significances is that later he would be teaching about love for Krishna in the mood of the gopis. And persons who have knowledge, these two often go together, knowledge and detachment, Jnana Vairagya. Jnana Vairagya is like a standard couplet in all Vedic teachings. Cultivation of knowledge for the outcome of detachment. The outcome of attachment is so that one can become attached to Brahman by detachment from matter arising from strong knowledge and detachment. Later, when he became a great devotee, he was criticized by the scholars. You're carrying on like a sentimentalist with ordinary people. Brahmins don't do this. Sannyasis don't do this. You have to be the Jnana Vairagya personality and study Vedanta Sutra. But he had already demonstrated. Tomorrow midday, we're going to hear about his defeating Digvijay Pandit. It's a very nice story. He showed even as a young man how qualified he was. Super scholar. He defeated the best of scholars in the land. So he wasn't lacking. He wasn't a sentimentalist, lacking in intellectual prowess. It was beyond that. He had that, and his bhakti was beyond that. It wasn't due to weakness. Because some people criticize. Bhakti is for people who are weak-minded. They're sentimentalists, so they do the bhakti thing. So he's demonstrating, like, thoroughly, that's not the case. He was a super scholar. There's, on and on and on and on, describing how he would debate with people. When he would challenge people to debate, he would make a statement and ask them to defeat it. They couldn't defeat it. Then he would defeat it. And then make another statement and ask them to defeat the other statement. They couldn't defeat it. He would defeat it and go back and reestablish the first statement. And back and forth, and they just it was demonstrating that argument and logic is inconclusive. But he was the best at it. He He was the best at everything because he's the personality of Godhead. But it's inconclusive. Even you're good at it. So if it's inconclusive, then what's conclusive? Not until later did he come to the bhakti platform, just by his lila, and by contact with his spiritual master and the teachings. His spiritual master, Ishwara Puri, also had written a book about Krishna's pastimes. And he was asking Nimai to critique it, or he was expert at grammar, to see if there were any grammar mistakes. That's another nice lila. So I think I better end. Because go on for quite some time. There's reading from Chaitanya Bhagavad is nice because the style of Rundavan Das Thakur's writing is just ecstatic. It's totally spontaneous. And Prabhupada chose to translate and render into English Chaitanya Charitamrita because the style is different. It's comprehensive and final in many ways, as far as explaining the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya in context of the teachings of the Goswamis, many references from Rupa Goswami's writings and Sanatana Goswami's writings and Jiva Goswami's writings. It made available to the world a very comprehensive picture of who was Lord Chaitanya and the teachings that he gave to these great personalities and how they confirmed everything that he said. And we're not so familiar with Chaitanya Bhagavad. Most devotees. But I didn't read the purports. Bhaktisiddhanta wrote the purports, and they're very, very authoritative and very thorough. But this section, I just read from, there's very little purport. It's just the pastimes. So let's see if there's some discussion. Anyone wants to bring up some points or discuss further? We have a portable microphone.
Okay, now,
There are people remote, so they can hear you.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. It was a really nice lecture. So I just wanted to actually, for the point you brought up about, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Kazi and, at the night he protested. He was able to communicate and at least get his, point. So my question is about, we are living in the time where we hear about the chaos which is going around in the world and everywhere. And, we are not able to go, and it's not something Prabhuji, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did, went there and we can communicate, but how can we make a difference for all what's going around? And sometimes we feel that we can do bhakti and chanting, but when we see something, and now we are living in a world where before you said that, we had no technology, but now it's different. We hear things and we feel the pain for others. And how can we help? Because sometimes the bhakti may not be enough, to convey that message or to help others.
You're making reference to Chandkazi, and I don't see the connection. I'm trying to understand your question so I can respond.
My question was, at least Mahaprabhu went there.
What was that? It's muffled sound.
Is it better?
It's a little better, but it's still not right. He's got a...
Hello. Is it better?
Well, just keep speaking, and he's got
okay, no problem.
16, 17 dials.
I think it's still muffling, I guess.
What is that causing your voice to loud?
So maybe I can use my voice?
I can hear better. I don't know about the remote people.
I was just trying to, I was trying to think about the point that you brought up, right? It was a nice thing about, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to go there and talk to Pasi about it and, at least, bring up, resolve the, whatever the conflict was going on, what they thought, and you were able to address that. But what I'm trying to say is, we're living right now in a time where we see all the chaos which is going around the world, right? In different parts of the world. And
so what are we supposed to do?
right,
That's your question?
Right, in terms of, how can we help? Like in terms of, chanting is one thing, definitely, but I'm trying to understand. Sometimes it's not something we feel for others, right? When we see things, how can we really?
Well, an easy answer for me is Vyasadeva, Srila Vyasadeva. He saw before it happened because he's Trikalagya. And it's not just, things going on around in the world today. And it's the age of Kali. And Vyasadeva looked forward in time and saw the age of Kali symptoms. And it was yikes. So he compiled Srimad Bhagavatam to be responsive. No, he compiled it because he was a literary person. We're not going to be able to compile Srimad Bhagavatam. We're not literary people like that. But we can, same as what the following disciplic succession, propagate the mission of Lord Chaitanya was, given what the age of Kali is all about, and there's details and details, and it gets worse and it gets worse. But that's the formula. It's Vyasadeva's formula and Lord Chaitanya's formula for this age of Kali. It's the Srimad Bhagavatam and the chanting of the holy name and the life of bhakti. Now, one can try to make adjustments in other ways or be responsive in other ways, and they're not going to have the same efficacy. They're not going to have the same efficacy. I sent a little 3-minute, 4-minute little something that Indulekha sent to me was a little interview of some reporter from India speaking in Hindi to their audience, and then interviewing a Ukrainian fellow about what he was doing. And it turns out he was a Hare Krishna guy. And he said, yes, I've been to India. I went to Mayapur and went to Rundavan. And I'm 51 years old, and I used to be an athlete. And now I volunteered for the army. And he pulled out of his, bulletproof vest, zipped this and zipped that, and pulled out his beads and said, in the evening I go home and chant. Now he's doing something, so I forwarded that to, you'd be interested to hear.
We saw that. It's very impressive.
Okay, but let me just tell you what the regional supervisor who works under the GBC for Ukraine, there's 25 temples in the Ukraine and thousands of devotees. 25 temples. I sent it to him. I thought you'd be interested in seeing this. He said, we have taken the position with the government that we're nonviolent. And my guess is he said, don't forward this to others. Because we've taken the position with the government that we're nonviolent, so we don't have to take part in these wars and things like that. He wasn't criticizing the person that was being interviewed, but he doesn't want the word to be spread that, oh, wait a minute, Hare Krishna guys can be part of the military too. So it wasn't just like for protection of the male population. That was not the main reason. When what's the antidote to the madness of Kali Yuga is the question. And the antidote is the spiritual antidote. Now, somebody might say, as you were saying, well, chanting Hare Krishna, that's okay, but what about there's a lot of madness going on. What's available to us to do something about it? It's become internally pure and propagate Krishna consciousness. And let's take the matter of violence. Violence is bred by violence. Prabhupada would say many times, so many wars because so many animals are being killed. So people are being killed fast. Violence breeds violence. People lead a violent life, and then comes the violence back to them. So what to do about the violence to animals? We don't just get on the bandwagon of animal rights. We propagate Krishna consciousness. The devotees, here's a practical example. Practical example. In Australia, they have a really big presence in prasadam distribution. Big. I mean, not just food for life. Big. It's labor-intensive activity is prasadam distribution. They have so many. They popularized vegetarianism to such a degree. I've heard the devotees say the number of cows being raised for slaughter has been reduced by some percentage, a third, because Australia is just large tracts of land. There's the coastal areas, but the interior areas is just cattle farms, but it's greatly reduced. They attribute it to the propagation of vegetarianism, and one of the leading, so that there may be some vegetarian movements or vegan movements, etc., etc. But the devotees take credit, and I believe they're right, by just having faith in propagating Krishna prasadam. Mass scale. It works. Here's another. This is also from Australia. One of my godbrothers sent me, I had no idea that this was going on in the world because we don't hear about something in Wellington. There's some kind of, 25 day protest going on because here it's winter, over there it's summer. So they're out in some place in Wellington protesting something. And the devotees are there feeding everybody and chanting Hare Krishna. And, when they see the devotees, this devotee was being interviewed by, in a live interview, some kind of a news thing, saying, wherever we go, as soon as we come, the Krishnas are coming, now things are going to be peaceful. Just the other day, I just went for a walk, because it was cold, so it got sunny, so I went for a walk. 3 people just, walking around the Dodi. Hare Krishna, you Hare Krishna? So it has, we can't estimate the dynamic of the power of bhakti through the name and then the teachings, but what's missing in the midst, the madness is there because Kali Yuga is advancing. In Kali Yuga, there's advancing because of godlessness. It's not just get on the bandwagon of thisism or thatism. It's no solution. It's no solution. Prabhupada was adamant, and he was right. People were proposing. Did you happen to read Giriraj Maharaj's book, I'll Build You a Temple, the Juhu story?
Yeah.
Prabhupada was invited to attend it's in that book, he was invited to attend some gathering where he was a panelist, he was a member to make a plan for promoting, well-being and peace and prosperity and stuff like that. And there were so many other people who were speakers, and Prabhupada was really strong. This, counteracting the perils by something that's good is no solution. It's impermanent because you're still missing the point. The missing point is God consciousness. And in promoting God consciousness, well, come on, promote God consciousness. The argument can be given, but what about the practical stuff? In God consciousness, we don't deny the practical stuff, but the practical stuff stays on the spiritual side of promoting God consciousness. And we have our primary weapons. The holy name, Krishna Prasadam, and the sound vibration of the teachings. And that's the best thing we can do, because it's permanent. And if you want to read explicitly with Prabhupada's comments, Giriraj Maharaj somehow has managed to capture his arguments, and it's really on fire. And not just to his own following, to those people. And they accepted it. I mean, after it took a while, but they honored his words because he was right. You have something?
I have a question. We were talking about this man who is a devotee, and he was in the army, but I'm just kind of curious. The Gita came out of Mahabharata. Mahabharata was nothing but a violence.
Yeah. And Ramayana too.
So is Ramayana. So what's wrong with that?
What's missing is Dharma. What's the fighting about? What's the fighting about?
Dharma.
No. And in Ramayana and Mahabharata, yes. And the fighting today? What's it about?
If that devotee was taking was in the army, he is doing dharma.
Yeah. No, he's not. Dharma is God-centered. There's no God-centeredness about what's going on.
Maybe we should stop the Russian war monster.
You can go ahead. But the advocacy of using violence is because Krishna wants it. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Arjuna wasn't ready. He was capable, but he wasn't ready when he understood Krishna wants it. So now, does Krishna want?
I know.
Yes. So what the principle is Dharma, not just fighting because you're strong and people. So what's the principle? Now, I don't want to get into a whole politics discussion because it's a hotbed of.
It's not resolvable.
Well, what did Prabhupada want us to do? We take, you wanted Krishna want. What did our founder Acharya want us to do when there are conflicts between one nation and another nation? Awaken Krishna consciousness. That's what he wanted us to do. He would speak to leaders who had the potential of influencing others, but he didn't. He would say sometimes privately, at least, the day may come when we will have to say, accept Krishna consciousness. But when you're fighting for a dharmic principle, it's one thing. And if it just gets a cat and dog fight, it's another thing. Kshatriya spirit has its place. Again, a really nice example as again in Giriraj Maharaj's book. There was a man, Mr. Seti, and he was a Kshatriya. And he used his Kshatriya skill to protect Radha Rasa Bihari. He told the son, get my shotgun and get my revolver. And he was taking shots, not to hit, but to scare the Gundas that were coming to take down the temple. It's like a very exciting thing. And he was fearless. But he didn't use his fighting spirit in other situations. It was to protect Dharma. That's where Kshatriyas have their place. And otherwise, they're nonviolent.
Yeah.
Now, when there's a cat and dog fight, what do?
Nothing.
Well, you have to promote Krishna consciousness, because that's what's behind the cat and dog fight. They're behaving like animals because of lack of... So now, how are you going to have big demons become Krishna conscious? You're not. Unless you're Lord Chaitanya. Then what do we do? In general, when the light goes on, persons are less inclined to follow a man that's a dog or an animal. But it's not just one part of the world. It's all over. It's all over. And it's atheism, without going into what's in the news. Right in this country. And there's some, this has traction with some people. Violence to for what? So what's the cause and what's the cure? The lack of God consciousness. And the action we take, vigorously take up becoming pure in heart and give Krishna consciousness to others as widely as possible. I'm sure you've heard Prabhupada's recorded lectures, because you seem to know, you've been around a while. How many hundreds of times did Prabhupada say the verse from Chaitanya Bhagavat? Those who have taken their birth in India, Bharata Bhumi Te Manusha Janmajar. You make your life perfect and give the message of Krishna to everyone. And when the light's on, darkness is dispelled. That's what we do. That's what Vyasadeva did. That's what Lord Chaitanya did. That's what our acharyas did. The Kali Yuga was, each passing generation, it gets darker and darker and darker. Kali Yuga is not going to get brighter. But there are ways to make the light come on stronger. And that's by Krishna consciousness. Promotion of Krishna consciousness. She's got to be center stage or else. Okay. Enough on current affairs. Anything else?
I have one question. First of all, thank you so much for this wonderful narration of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's day. The discussion is going around the violence versus non-violence, some practical problem we are facing, so need your guidance on that. So when the other person is about to understand about Krishna or God consciousness, that's fine. What if it is an animal?
What to do when
dealing with that? The mice coming, the home. We try to drive them away. The only thing we're saying that we call someone that puts some pesticide, something, kill them, which we don't want. How to face that situation?
Are you asking about pests in the house specifically?
Yeah.
What do you do when you have pests in the house? That's what your question is.
Yeah.
Okay. Two things. First and foremost, clean. Summit cleanliness, summit cleanliness, summit cleanliness, summit cleanliness. Because where they're coming, they want something to eat. You keep the place clean. You keep the place clean, and that's the best deterrent.
It's her birthday today.
She's cute, right? She's a really cute little girl.
Big day for her.
Yeah, she's got a big audience. So here's there was a question asked of Prabhupada in the Manhattan Temple, the Henry Street, the 55th Street Temple. There were cockroaches. You know, what should we do? Cleanliness, cleanliness, cleanliness. We did the cleanliness. They're still there. So he said it 3 times, and then if the cleanliness is observed maximum, then you can get an exterminator. But that's not, what most people do is they just go for the exterminator. But the cleanliness keeps the lower modes of nature creatures away. Prabhupada told the story, I think it was his uncle or something like that. Can't remember. He was a cloth merchant. His uncle? Father? His father. So, to keep the rodents from chewing the cloth, he put a little place where they could get something to eat. And they would go and get that something to eat, and they left the cloth alone. And the amount of money he spent to, there was a cloth merchant. If they started eating the cloth, he would lose a lot of money. But it was protecting his goods, but it's also the kindness. So, I don't recommend that you put a rodent dish out there in your backyard or something. But there may be some way. But it's not just your home. It's what's around, because other homes, and then they're looking because they're finding. It's the lack of cleanliness is a symptom of cleanliness is next to godliness. Lack of cleanliness is lack of godliness. So in your own home, you promote godliness, which next to godliness is cleanliness. Okay. Anything else? Yeah?
Can I ask one more question?
Sure, why not?
You mentioned something about the animal sacrifice, and actually I was also reading the Srimad Bhagavatam Chapter 4. And I just completed that part which talks about the animal sacrifice just for Vedic mantra validation.
Yes.
To kill animals.
Yes, exactly.
Vedic mantras. And you made a point about the cow. And I understand it's killing animals is for better for the animals, giving them better life, regenerating. But why didn't they consider that time when they were killing animals? Why not cow to give them a better life? Cow is considered, but
Well, Ashwamedha Yagya and Gomedha Yagya were done. In this age, there's specific reference in this age of Kali. There are 5 things, and those are 2 of the 5 things that are prevented or prohibited in this age of Kali, because they're not Brahmanas qualified. So it was there. Okay? I don't know the details.
I'm just trying to see if it's for better life.
Yeah, it's
Just
but it wasn't just like let's do a nice thing for this old horse or this old cow and give them new life. That's not send them back to Godhead. Engage them in accepting milk from them or whatever service from them, and use that in Krishna service. That's not just do a yoga and give them a new life. That new life is going to also die.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well, good. Thank you very much, Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Yeah.